You know that classic image we all have of a startup founder? The lone genius tinkering away in a garage, about to change the world? Well, what if I told you that picture is missing the most important part? What if it's missing pretty much everything else?
It really gets to that age-old debate, doesn't it? Are these incredible entrepreneurs just born with something different, some kind of special gene? Or are they made, forged through pure hard work and grit?
While the research we're exploring today throws a curveball, it suggests a third option entirely. It argues they aren't born or made, they're grown. But, and this is the key part, just like any seed, they can only ever flourish if they're planted in the right kind of soil.
Okay, so let's dive into this. And we have to start by tackling what the research calls the myth of the founder.
This quote really points to a huge shift in thinking. It's not just about one person's brilliant idea anymore. It's about the entire network, the investors, the mentors, the policymakers, all working together like parts of a complex machine. And if you take one of those crucial parts away, the whole thing can just grind to a halt.
So, to really understand this system, we first need to make sure we're all speaking the same language. The research breaks it all down into three key concepts it calls the 3 E's.
This table lays it out nice and simple. First, you have the entrepreneur. That's the person, the visionary. Then there's entrepreneurship. That's the process. It's all the stuff the entrepreneur actually does. And finally, you get the enterprise. That's the result, the business itself, the company that creates value and jobs. So person, process, result. Simple enough, right?
And that person right at the center of it all, the entrepreneur, they need a really specific set of tools to navigate all of this. We're talking about more than just being a good business owner. You have to be a visionary to even see the path forward, a problem solver to get past all the hurdles, and you have to be incredibly resilient because, as we're about to see, this ecosystem can be a really tough place. You've got to be action-oriented and accountable for sure.
Okay, so now that we've got our terms down, let's get to the main event. Understanding the environment these entrepreneurs have to survive in. Let's call it the entrepreneurial jungle.
You know, the word ecosystem actually comes from biology. Way back in 1935, a botanist named Arthur Tansley defined it as how all the organisms in one area interact with their surroundings to keep the whole unit alive and sustained. Just think of a rainforest. Every single plant, animal, and even the soil are all connected and depend on each other. And now, we see that exact same idea applied to the world of business. But instead of plants and animals, we're talking about this dynamic web of social, political, and economic forces. Every single one of those elements in a region can either act like fertile soil that helps new companies sprout up, or it can be a barrier that stops them cold.
So who actually lives in this jungle? Well, you've got the entrepreneurs, of course, but they are not living there alone. They rely on investors for money, on universities for fresh ideas and research, and on policymakers to help clear the path for them. Even lawyers and mentors are like crucial species in this jungle, each one playing a really specialized role that keeps the entire system in balance.
And hey, this isn't just a cool theory. The research points to real-world examples, like Bangalore and Hyderabad in India. These cities have absolutely exploded as tech hubs, not because of a few random smart founders, but because they have intentionally cultivated this entire ecosystem where the government, the financing, and the talent all work together.
So, if this is a jungle, what does it need to really flourish? What actually makes the soil fertile for startups to grow? Well, that brings us to what researcher Daniel Isenberg calls the 6 essential nutrients. Okay, this slide is basically the heart of the whole thing, so let's walk through it. This framework shows the 6 essential nutrients an ecosystem needs, but notice how they're all connected. You could have a brilliant workforce, that's your human capital, but if there's no access to finance, their ideas aren't going anywhere. You could have the best policy with low taxes, but if the culture punishes failure, nobody's going to take a risk. You need strong supports like good internet, and you need markets with customers ready to buy. The big insight here is that this isn't a checklist, it's a living system. A weakness in just one of these domains can starve the entire ecosystem.
But, of course, not every ecosystem is a paradise. Far from it. A lot of them are struggling. So what happens when these nutrients are missing? Let's take a look at the most common challenges and how we can start to fix the system.
I kind of like how this is laid out, almost like a doctor's chart. You've got the symptom on the left and the cure on the right. So if your ecosystem is being choked by policy barriers and red tape, the prescription is to improve the ease of doing business. If it's starving from limited financing, the cure is to create better ways to get capital. See how that works? Every problem has a direct corresponding solution. It shows us these aren't impossible issues. They just require very targeted action.
So, after looking at the person, the process, and this whole environment, we can step back and ask the big question. Why does any of this matter?
Well, it's time to completely update that image in our heads. As all this research shows, startups aren't born from a single hero pushing a boulder up a hill. They're grown, carefully, in a thriving community. The biggest takeaway is the simple, powerful idea. It truly does take an ecosystem to raise a startup.
And that leaves us with one final thought. Think about where you live. If you were going to plant a startup tomorrow, what's the most powerful nutrient in your local soil? And, maybe even more importantly, what's the one thing that's missing? The one thing that's holding your entire ecosystem back?